Would you rather send it or ship it? That is the question. Yeah, so how's the audio on this recording? This is a different microphone. So based on the feedback from the last video, it seems like it would be worth clarifying some points and understanding what the responses were. So as presented in the last video, I feel like it's better to provide the data and let people come to their own conclusions. So it's sort of a disservice to choose someone else's food for them when you can present them a meal and let them decide what they want to do with it for themselves. But you'll still get people who, if it's not chips and soda or the cinnamon challenge, they're going to throw a fit. So it's worth pointing out the timeline for Redox OS. The 0.8 release came out 2.5 years before the 0.9 release. There's 2.5 years in between releases. So that's 30 months. It's not 30 weeks, it's not 30 days. And so there shouldn't really be any sort of drivers to push what I had proposed, the idea I had proposed and wrote the code for. There should be no, oh, it's been 3 weeks. Well, we don't care what you're gonna do now. We're just gonna close your ticket and open it our own. And we're just gonna merge it. We're just gonna close your pull request. It wasn't like, oh, well, we have another release in 30 days and it's been 3 weeks. We need to get this pushed. Otherwise, we can't push this next release. This wasn't blocking anything. That page has been that way for 2.5 years. So there should be no urgency to implement my suggestion. And instead of leaving it as is and merging, which is something Ribbon had already suggested, or leaving a comment about what's going to happen, like, hey, we need to get this out immediately because we have another release in 29 more months. So we have to make sure this gets pushed immediately because it's blocking everything, you know? So in a new ticket, we're going to do the merge request ourselves unless you respond. It wasn't that. The pool was closed. So the maintainer Ribbon is turning Redox into Habbo Hotel. They're closing the pull request. Pool's closed, guys. So there should be no urgency for another, not 30 days, not 30 weeks, another 29 months. Then I could see some urgency if this was a blocking change. So as I mentioned before, I've opened 25 tickets. 3 of them were general questions and there's 22 open. So the one that Ribbon is working to close was the one where I've already done the work. And it's not like this feature or idea was driven by someone else. So there's plenty of things that the maintainers could have focused on that could provide more value or be a bigger impact. So the other 22 tickets that I've opened would provide more value if those were focused on, because first impressions are everything. Redox is bundling a row of apps in its desktop. It's not like these are optional. These are what the project has deemed as something they believe you should see. And if the first thing you see when you open a window is that it's spilling off your display and you can't see the whole window, or you open NetSurf and it immediately crashes and you cannot close the window, it's permanently open. What kind of impression do you think that leaves versus updating the documentation? Which do you think would leave a bigger impression on someone? And if that is your first impression, trying to use these applications that Redox has chosen to bundle, and this is how they behave, and you have other operating system options that do not behave in that way, what do you think people will choose? So the number of issues that's opened in the project is more detrimental than adding new features. I understand how some people can fall into the situation of, if I just add one more feature, everyone's gonna love this. That sounds like a trap. A feature that's working is more valuable than a new feature, particularly in the long term. And of these 170 tickets that are opened, this is the community that has gone out of their way to try to use this project. They've taken their time to share their findings, and this engagement from the community is falling to the wayside by not being addressed. These are things that people are actually using, not a feature that doesn't exist yet. And I will say, yes, GitLab absolutely has issues, and I fell into the trap. I fell into the GitLab trap. But that doesn't dismiss the behavior of this one person who isn't just another community member. This is a maintainer for the project. I would never use GitLab because I know there are better options available. And just like I wouldn't use Ubuntu for a web server or leave the default vhost on the server for this open source project to a personal website that discloses personal information. So the feedback, the feedback I've seen falls into sort of 3 categories. There's the I'm upset because I don't want to hear this about the community. Why are you even talking about this? This is drama. This provides no value. There's that kind of comment. There was the GitLab is a trap. You're going to run into this. So it's free for all after that. You can do whatever you want to your community because GitLab is a trap. And then finally, there's the everything is fine comments where they're trying to say there's nothing to see here. This is what we keep under the rug. Don't look under there. Everything's fine. And the thing to understand is this is actions taken by a maintainer for this particular community for Redox. This wasn't just a random person. Do people understand the implications or what this spells out for the future of the Redox community? Look at the Linux kernel situation. Is that what you want? Rust is coming whether people who program in C like it or not. They can continue to live their lives in the C mosh pit if that's what they choose. It's like, I remember people saying, no, you can't use a calculator because you're not going to have a calculator next to you all the time. And the genie's out of the bottle. You can't make the knowledge of large language models go back into the bottle. You can't make them not exist. Not in this economy. So something I will say is when reading feedback, focusing on the value of the feedback is the most important thing. It's not necessary to focus on if the comment is from a bot or AI or a troll or a comment that's trying to play the field and agree with everything. Which reminds me, the first time I experienced that was in Europe at an Airbnb that listed 1 room with 2 beds. Not 1 bed in a room share with 2 beds, 1 room with 2 beds. And when I showed the literal posting that said this to the front desk person, they said, oh, okay, well, I see where you're coming from. It should probably say 1 bed and a room share with 2 beds, but it says 1 bedroom with 2 beds in it. And he was going back and forth with the owner of the Airbnb, and he was saying, oh, okay, well, I can understand where he's coming from because, why would you get a room with 2 beds? I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. Some people just won't understand. So what do you think is reasonable behavior in a community or project that you would like to be part of? Do you think it's totally normal and fine for any work you do to be closed out? That work is then copied by someone, a maintainer, not someone, a maintainer of the project, and then submitted as their own. Is that behavior okay with you? And I wanted to mention that it might be worth noting that I've removed the Redox 0.8 information from everybytecounts.org and the Pop! OS 2022 information. I was sort of playing favorites and listing them as an exception because of the potential in the future with the Rust-based code, but that's probably unreasonable because any operating system that hasn't been updated in a year is removed, with 3 obvious exceptions. So the old data has been removed, and once Pop! OS provides a new release or Redox, the next version comes out and it has a functioning installer, then I would be happy to add them back in. Like the comment someone left saying, this ticket hasn't been merged, but I wonder what the purpose of the opening this merge request is. Or there's also the downplaying of, oh, well, this wasn't a massive breaking change to the project, so it's okay if someone else just claims credit of your work. Would you want to invest your time and work into a project or community who's just going to remove your attribution and work and claim it as their own? And it's not like this just happened to one person. as I pointed out in the last video, I'm not the only one. So this is an opportunity to think about how communities function and which communities you want to be a part of. And the thing is, I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do. I'm opening up the idea that something is happening here and there's an opportunity. The other type of comment is the dismissal of this behavior. Things get better because people do something about it. Speaking up is one of those things. I am more interested in hearing feedback regarding a situation or hearing someone describe their experience than hearing someone saying your input is not valuable. I would much rather hear what people have to say. If your only contribution is don't look under the rug because this is where we keep stuff you're not supposed to look at, that's not a part of a community I would want to be part of. If it is, the Linux kernel is there for you. There are decades of C code that would love you to read it. But jokes aside, without Linus Torvalds' code, would open source exist in the way it does today? And knowing that, what can we do to make this situation better, not just for us, but for the future? If you have experiences like this with projects you worked on, I would be interested in hearing those. Hey, I ain't Eddie.